I wanted to show you just very quickly how to get started with sewing your monsters and some tips and tricks. So first and foremost, this is just like a scrap sock, but you never want to sew your sock the nice side out. So remember, you always have to turn it inside out, ugly side facing you. Don't forget, ugly side. This is just going to be an example so I can show you about a couple of things that you might want to do when you start sewing your own. So I'm just going to do a little triangle, nothing exciting. When you have your sock, you're going to have to draw what you want on here. I suggest using crayons. They're kind of difficult to use on the sock. They suck drawing. They take a little bit of time, but they won't bleed through. I used to have my students do Sharpies, and then you'd see all of the Sharpie marks. That would drive me crazy. So just grab a crayon from the crayon box, and I'm just going to do a giant triangle. So let me pause, and I'll draw my little piece right now. So just like I showed you earlier, don't forget that you don't want to do your pieces too small. They're going to become small. So for instance, here's my little example of my pillow and the fabric I use. They're going to get tinier. So what I always suggest is if you're not sure how small you want to go, what I advised this student in the past was draw the size you want, how small it is, and then just go a little bit larger than that. And that's what you should cut out. So I'm going to cut this out and I'll show you what to do next. Now, since I used the side of the sock, it's still connected right there. What you want to make sure is to cut it. You need to have a spot that's going to be open so you can stuff it, kind of like how we had our little pin cushion. So I'm just going to go through and just slice right down the middle. So I have those two sides. Now, what's a really nice thing to use, you don't have to, are darning needles. That's what these little guys are. And I have them for you to use on your project if you want. What you're going to do is use the darning needles so the fabric doesn't move while you're sewing. Sometimes as you sew, if you notice with your little pincushion pillow, the fabric tends to like slide away from itself. So the darning needles keep them in place. And all you have to do with these little guys is just put them through, and don't stab yourself, and then just bring them back through. So they're kind of just lying flat. And I'll use a few more. So I'm just pushing it through, going, line up, back through, and I'll do the same to this other side. Line up my fabric. And I'll push it through as I accidentally stab myself and go through, and I'll do one more. So now my fabric won't move as I sew. Like always, anytime we start, we're always going to thread our needle. And I have my ugly fly knot ready to go. You want to use thread that matches your sock as close as possible. I'm using white so that way you can see my stitches. So I'm going to go ahead and start. Doesn't matter which side you start on. It's totally up to you. Don't even worry about the darning needles either. You just want to make sure you're not sewing at the very, very edge. So I'm just going to pick this corner right here. So I'm not at the edge of that side or this side, and pull through. Kind of fix that weird knot that happened. And now I'm going to start my running stitch. So I'll go ahead and get through that and then see you in a few minutes. Now I'm almost done sewing this little triangle. Just got a few more stitches to finish up. What I wanted to show you though is that even though I didn't use that much thread, it's already starting to twist and turn on itself. So that's why we never get too much thread, because that's where the knots start to happen. And you can even see I'm already getting a knot right there. You shouldn't ignore the knots. Try to undo them if you can, because it'll make that part of your spot just weaker. So I'm going to finish right here, just like we did on the pillow. I'm going to go underneath the last stitch, put my needle through the loop, pull, And then do it one more time. So my needle's going to go underneath the last stitch. Hold the loop, through the loop, and pull. Now, since I've done at least one round of that running stitch, I can take off the darning needles. But I wanted to show you something really quickly before I do that, because once you get this, you're good to go. If you can notice, I have this one stitch right there that crosses over the darning needle. That's fine. Remember, when you slide these out, the needles are so thin that it's not going to get pulled up. Just make sure you slide them out very slowly. And it's fine if your sewing goes over or under or around them. Even if it's around the base of the little ball, it doesn't matter because they'll just slide out and your stitches will stay. One thing to remember too is however you stitch is however the shape makes. So I tried to go as close as I could to the edge without getting too close, so that way it still has that point. And now I got to stitch one more time. So I won't have you watch that. I'll do that on my own. But when you start to flip this inside out, that's when you'll start to get your nice little piece. I'm going to pop the rest of that little triangle out. But what you're starting with are any arms, any legs that you're going to be attaching, horns, anything that's just extra that's not the body. You always want to make sure you sew all of the sides that are cut and keep the part that's going to attach to the body open, because that's how we're going to flip it and stuff it. So go ahead and do that. If you want to use the darning needles, of course, come up and get one of the containers that has them. You don't have to if you don't want to. They've always saved my life, but not everyone uses them, so it's up to you. So don't forget to do the running stitch twice. Cut your pieces bigger than they need to be, just to be on the safe side. And you're only starting with any of the extra stuff. Don't start on the body yet, because the body has a couple different rules to follow. So as long as you sew up all of your cuts, you have that one side open that we're going to flip and stuff, you are good to go. So I'll talk to you guys in a little while.